My name is Casey Fuerst, and I work with small businesses and nonprofits mostly. I'm based out of Minneapolis, and I exist to help everyone else's businesses grow and do better.
Yeah. I'm Tina Smith, and I am here to help you find ways to make your message better on your website, because we want website performance. Our websites are assets and we want an ROI.
Right.
So let's
If
talk.
your website's not going to work, then what's the point of having it?
Exactly.
Amen, sister.
So Casey, you are a StoryBrand Certified guide.
I am. Yes, I'm in like halfway through my 4th year doing this. And honestly, it's such an incredible tool, and it becomes so second nature to the work that we do that I just tell everybody, after you've done this for a while, it's not rocket science. It's just something that requires a lot of practice, and it works so well.
Yeah, I think the key that you just said there is that it requires a lot of practice.
Mm-hmm.
So for people who are this is their first time using the StoryBrand framework, maybe they don't even know about the StoryBrand framework yet, although they will by the end of our course together. But if they're first timers or even second or third time running through it, there are a lot of mistakes that we see happening when you take that StoryBrand framework and you try to put that message on a website. Tell me, like, biggest mistakes that you find people making when they try to transition from StoryBrand message to website.
Such a good question. And there's so many things. In fact, I just want to start by saying sometimes it's really, really hard to do your own message. And I know you could say this too, right? Like,
Yes.
It seems like about once a year, I need to get on the phone with another guide and say, help me walk through my own message. Like, when we're in the weeds, it's hard to see, the rest of the big picture. So that's completely normal. And then I think the other, like, the space that I kind of want to go is to say that not only is it hard to make your own message because you're in the weeds, but it's hard because we're trained to be academic thinkers, right? Like, most of us have bachelor's degrees, some have masters, some even have PhDs. So we're taught to think in complex terms. And StoryBrand really goes the opposite direction and kind of leans into that space that clear is always better than clever. We don't need to be smart. We need to be clear. It needs to be simple. And that's, of course, the biggest mistake that people make is they overcomplicate it. They add too many things to it. And the results of StoryBrand kind of rest on this core principle that it needs to be one idea. And that's really hard for people to get to.
Yeah. So tell me a little bit about how you work that magic, because I get a lot of clients that say to me, but I do all of these different things. So how could I possibly just talk about one thing?
Yeah, well, I mean, I think the way that StoryBrand, Don Miller specifically says it is you can do all those things. You can only talk about one at a time. And you think about it, the things that market to you, if a shoe company is saying we have shoes, but we also have purses and scarves and socks, and don't forget to get all of your arch support stuff here and all of that thing, you quickly forget that they're actually just a shoe company. And you start to get confused about, well, I don't know how to describe them. I don't know what to do. So the first thing you really have to do is get clear with yourself about, how do I want to be known? What's the thing I want to be known for? And how do I want people to talk about it? And then it's repeat, and one thing at a time. You can have the save the whales and feed the starving pastors and whatever you want to do, but create separate platforms for them, create separate spaces to talk about them.
Hey there, sorry to interrupt, but are you liking this content? Is it something that you're benefiting from? Are you learning something and growing a little bit from this content? If the answer to any of those questions is yes, do me a favor, hit that like button so the algorithm will send this out to more people just like you, so that we can all build more profitable businesses and do more life together. Thanks for watching. Are you going to start that nonprofit, Feed the Starving Pastors? You're talking about what you do is distill it down to one thing. That can be really scary. What do you do to combat some of that fear for some of your clients that you work with?
Right. So there's kind of 2 ways to go with this. One, you can get more general. The other, you can get more specific, right? And some people are just super afraid of getting more specific. Here's what I can say that I believe is true. When we get more specific, we sell more, right? I believe that. However, there's sometimes space where we have to be general to start with to get people in the door. And this is where the kind of art of it comes in more than the science. So, I would say reach out to somebody who can help you navigate it from an outsider's perspective. And that's kind of how you have to go about it. It's
And then
not always
sometimes you
simple.
just pick.
Sometimes you just pick and try it. And the great thing about digital assets is we can change them much easier than we can print. It used to be we'd print something and we'd be stuck with it. Now we can change our websites every day if we want to. I wouldn't recommend that.
Yes. And we love doing that. Always be testing, I say.
Yeah.
Okay, so tell me, let's go through some of the components and how that can go awry on a website. So we like to start with the transformation, which I know comes sort of at the bottom of the StoryBrand framework, but that gives us a foundation which we build off of. So tell me what goes wrong when people try to put their transformation into words.
A fun example that I use for camps. I work with some summer camps. It's really super fun to get to be in that kind of culture. And so for some of them that are more church-based, they like to talk about faith being the transformation. Kids come in a little bit scattered, a little confused. They walk out with a little bit more focus on their faith, right? But kids don't come to camp for that reason. And most of the time, parents aren't sending kids to camp for that reason. So I think that a lot of times they're choosing the transformation that matters to them, not to their audience.
Ooh, that's good.
Right. So sometimes it can be that we're choosing what we think matters. Maybe that's not what it was what exactly is important to our consumer.
And how do you find out?
Test.
Yeah.
Test and ask. I mean, surveys up front, anything that we can do to kind of collect information. For most places, unless you're brand new starting out, you ought to have some sense of that, right? And or you ought to have access to your people to ask them.
Yeah. And you know what? I think sometimes we go astray here because we're looking for something more grandiose. So in your example of you're solidifying a faith for a child, and maybe that's not the reason that someone's coming to camp, then they're maybe a little bit more pie in the sky or aspirational instead of being a bit more realistic about what is really getting the kids in the door today. And they get the byproduct, which can go in that success bucket of getting more solid faith while they're also having fun, mixing and mingling with friends, like whatever that transition should be.
Well, and the other thing is sometimes there's a place for that message, but it's misplaced on the wrong audience. So that faith message really should land harder with their donors, their nonprofit organizations, right? Than with the parents. Donors want to fund that. Parents aren't necessarily, that's not forefront for parents. So sometimes it's just misplaced.
Yeah, that's a really good point. And one of the things with the transformation that gets difficult when you're trying to pull it out of your clients sometimes, because we talk about like, what do they want other people to say about them? When at the end of the day, they're moving from something to something. And people have a hard time like putting that hat on, being a different person and saying, okay, here's what I think someone would want someone else to say about them. That's like 3 people removed at that point that you're trying to imagine what that story would be. So what do they want people to say about them? And that becoming a transformation. So in the example, just because you gave it of a summer camp, what might be the transformation, that someone's looking for?
I think if you're talking to kids, it's fun and acceptance.
So maybe moving from bored to fun.
Right. And friends that are going to last a lifetime, right? Your people, you're finding your people, right? For parents, it's confidence and skills, right? It's my kid tried something new. They came home a bit transformed, a bit more alive, a bit more able to engage in life in a I don't know, they just hold themselves higher kind of a way.
Yeah. Okay. So those are great transformations for like a summer camp. I like using examples just because it just solidifies the idea a little bit better.
Yeah.
And so a way that could go wrong is something that might appeal more to donors in a nonprofit situation. So maybe that more aspirational idea of faith and transforming faith while they're at camp. But when you're talking about people who are actually going to make the purchase, we're talking about something different. So that's a great example of how that can go wrong. If you're thinking about the wrong audience when you're talking through that transformation.
Yep. And
So
it's another space where we can see that. So for a camp, they've got multiple audiences, right? And
mm,
so they have to be able to separate out where donors go versus where parents go. And, that we get into a whole nother level of like navigation on websites and stuff when we get there, but it has to be clear. Because we oftentimes use the example, it's like my hall closet at home, right? Everybody shoves their crap in there because everybody thinks their stuff belongs. But in the end, things are falling out. Nobody can find what they need. And it's just a hot mess all the time. So we've got to take it all out and decide what this closet is going to be used for. And then put that thing back in there and find a place for the other things. And I can guarantee, even for the initial confusion it might cause, a donor might say, oh, but I used to find this here. They're going to be so much happier with the transformation when they can get where they need to be, they get the information that they need, and it's so much of a smoother experience for them.
yeah, when it's less confusing, everyone wins, right?
Right. Yeah.
So
Nobody
when
wants that hall closet.
no one wants that hall closet. So think about the character itself, like identifying who that is. What do you see going wrong there?
Yeah, well, I mean, I think again, it's choosing the wrong character for the wrong message. So that could be off. In the case of, just to keep hammering on this camps piece, camps choose kids as the audience, and that's just not right. The audience is mom. It's not even dad. Let's be real. If we can say that 80% of the decisions are made with one audience, that's your audience. And, that goes to another point. People want to keep adding audiences. And just because it might leave someone out doesn't mean that shouldn't be your audience. You need to speak to the majority.
Yeah, well, I think that's key too, because you said something there where you're using a measurement tool. If it's 80% right, then that's the right place to be right now. So maybe you pivot in the future, or you create another landing page for a different audience and drive them there with ads or whatever. But if you've got 80% of people that that are trying to come to you for services, then just talk to that group of people. That makes sense.
Right. And don't worry about the 20. Don't worry about well, but then we might be excluding so-and-so's aunt. Well, the so-and-so's aunt is still welcome there, but she's not our target audience.
And she doesn't mind that mom likes what you're doing.
Exactly. And if we serve all those 20%, all those little itty bitty pockets, we water the message down way too much, and the 80% aren't getting what they need.
Yeah, it's just not personal enough.
Yeah.
Okay, so talk about the want. How does that go awry?
So it's not typically something like, I want faith development for my kid.
Right.
I'm Googling, I want summer camp.
And this is a big one to me, because the want can be a number of things, and maybe the story still works that way, but it's not the right want if it's not what you provide.
Got it. Oh, yeah, for sure. And it is easy to kind of get down that rabbit hole sometimes.
Yes.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah. So you really are a summer camp, and people are going to Google for summer camps and find you. They'll like that you're faith-based. It doesn't go the other way around. Correct. Generally speaking, like, how do I solidify my kids' faith? That's generally not what people are Googling. They're Googling for a fun summer camp, and then they sign up because you're faith-based. So
absolutely,
those things go together. So then we get to the problem. And when I think about problems going wrong on websites, I think first, you're right. Maybe the story isn't connected, but also like they don't talk about it enough.
Oh yeah, for sure. It's the thing my clients always want to cut. It's the thing where they're like, this is too negative. This makes me feel, not good. I don't want that. Well, unless you're talking about the problem, they don't need your solution. So you have to put the problem on there. You're absolutely right.
Yeah. How do you combat that in the end? Do you just have that conversation with them, or
I try.
Are you like, let's try this?
Right. Sometimes, you end up handing over a project to a client and they end up doing whatever they want anyway. But I just try to educate and reinforce that, try it for a while and see what it looks like. And it's also a space where if we can help them see that they can narrow this problem down even more. So I assign them the task of the next 5 clients or people that you talk to. Specifically ask, what problem are you trying to solve? How does that make you feel? And when they kind of take ownership of learning that themselves, then they're more likely to leave it on there to kind of keep that as a core piece.
Yeah. Also, I mean, testimonials are a great place to
Mhm.
sort of tease those out because it's someone else talking about the negative thing that they were experiencing prior to the service.
Right.
But honestly, so there's problems and then there's failure or loss. Sometimes those get a little bit mixed up. Um, and people think they're the same thing, and it feels like everything's negative because we're talking about problems and we're talking about failure. And I think really the problem is something you solve, and then the failure is, okay, here's where you'll be if you don't solve this problem.
Right. Yes.
And so light on the failure part, but talk about
Heavy
the
on the
problem
problem.
a lot. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. And the other thing is it's really hard to sometimes get the problem nailed on the first try. And so that it is a space where testing and refining and taking a look at if something's not working, oftentimes that's where it is. Either you're not talking about it at all enough or you're talking about the wrong problem. So you kind of do have to keep having those conversations with your constituents to dig deeper. How does this make you feel? What do you like about this? What happens that made you come here? What's the problem?
When you looked at my website, what made you say, yes, I need this?
Yeah. Yeah.
Right? I mean, those are the kinds of questions you can ask to really tease
Oh,
out,
that's good. Yeah.
when did I hit that problem on the head? Um, so in speaking of that and doing some iterations of this thing, because I do think that some of us, I will include myself, get frustrated if you don't nail it the first time around. And so let's talk about your personal experience. How long did it take you before you felt like, wait, this is a good story I've got going here for my own business?
Yeah, I think because you're asking a question about my business and I know my whole history. So it's really hard to compare that to when we walk into a client and you're talking from that point forward. For me, it wasn't just about nailing it for the customer, it was about nailing it for myself. And I think when we work with clients, a lot of times we're helping them to navigate this experience too. Like I think I know the problem that I really help people solve, but I'm not really sure that's the problem I want to help people solve. And so it becomes this not just finding the right marketing message, but evolving your whole understanding of who you are and what you do. So, and that's my own experience is the more that I get clear on who do I serve, how do I serve them, and does that meet that magical space where this is where my great skills overlap and where I can make money, right? So then that you're kind of always tweaking that. Okay, I found it. And then tomorrow it changed. And so you kind of have to keep finding it again. So it's the same story for clients. I would say that a message, once it's online, unless it's a total disaster and you're getting nothing and everybody hates it, you do have to leave it for a couple months and kind of let it dig in and see. And that's where you're good at this analytics kind of digging in and seeing where do people come at the site, where do they stay, what do they want. A lot of your data can tell you the answers to those things, and that's where you can start to shape and evolve it a bit too.
Yeah, and I love what you just pointed out because there are a couple of things going on here. One of them is you're already doing something where you're serving someone or else you wouldn't be in business, right?
Mm,
And but the question is that what you want to be doing when you grow up?
right.
And
Yeah.
some of us have these identity crises in the middle of or even after we've worked painstakingly through a messaging process.
Yeah. Especially for small businesses, right?
Gosh, yes.
Yeah.
Well, and the market changes. So the market changes,
Yeah.
who we want to be changes as we sort of get in there and figure it out.
Yeah.
And then the message has to continue to evolve with that. So this is something that should be revisited. And I'll
Hmm.
tell you, when I first started using StoryBrand, I think it took a good 6 months
Yeah.
for me to feel like the message worked. And you're right. I didn't necessarily love all the things that we were doing as a business. So then, of course, things have changed over the years from that. But even to get my own message right, putting it through the StoryBrand process, it really felt like I wasn't it just didn't flow exactly like I wanted it to for maybe 6 months, 9 months.
Mm-hmm.
And then I just kept tweaking to get it. And then I was like, okay, wait, this is a story. This is a story I can tell.
It's an evolving story too. It never lands and stays there. And if it does, it's not for very long.
Yes.
So, yeah.
Yeah. And everything's changing so much more quickly these days, whether it's with technology or with what people need and want, especially as we've all just been through a huge shift
Oh my gosh,
in mindset, among other things. So great time to review your message and make sure it's still heading where you want it to land.
Yeah, I mean, we saw a lot of that too at the beginning of the pandemic. We saw this mad rush to kind of switch course for people. And those that were still, didn't, were oftentimes left in a space of answering a problem that either didn't exist anymore or was certainly not top of mind. So, and I saw that a lot with my consulting clients. They were used to being able to go in and facilitate workshops, and they kind of like just the need for that, they felt they just went away. People are so worried about the other stuff. And it wasn't true. It took a month or two to kind of get back in the game, but people were just as interested in what they were offering. They just needed it, how they got it to evolve. And those that didn't keep up with that really missed out.
Yeah. So sometimes it's not even changing the entire message, it's pieces of it. So maybe the plan changes.
Yeah.
Like you're talking about, this is
or
how we deliver this now.
Or your value stack on your website, right? I mean, they need to be able to understand within that first screen who you are, what do you do, what do you need from me, right? So if all it says is it's got a picture of you in a room with nobody with masks on and you're delivering a presentation, what it says is you do in-person workshops. What it needs to say is we do virtual, and whether that's through a picture or a new kind of bullet point off to the side that says now offering virtual, which I mean, now we're evolving back, we're changing back again. So don't jump on board with this, but that's where we were a year ago.
Right. So it's just the point of things are always changing. So is your message, and it has to.
Yeah.
So that makes sense. So we've gotten through problem. What are we missing?
Guide.
Talk to me about the guide.
Yeah. So the guide is the space where we kind of introduce ourselves as the ones that can help them solve their problem. Right. And none of us really want, well, some people do, but most of us don't really want to be the braggarts that kind of say, look how great I am. So I think one of the greatest ways that we can do this is with testimonials. Certainly some things like certifications and degrees and those kinds of things are more important in some industries than others. But the biggest thing that we can do is have other people say how great we are through those testimonials. But then I think it's just, we cannot undervalue the component where we express empathy. Empathy is just key to connecting with people. Brene Brown talks about this all the time. Isn't it you that calls her Auntie Brene?
No, I don't, but I would think of her as that. Yeah.
Yes, right. Well, Auntie Brene talks a lot about how unless we're willing to express empathy, then it's really hard to emotionally connect with others. And so, it's really hard to get a marketing message absent of a human to connect with the person unless it has a human touch, and empathy is how we do that. So
yeah. And so you said something earlier that just sparked a thought for me, because you were like, most of us don't like to be braggarts. And I find that it falls on the extremes. Like either people don't want to talk about themselves at all, or they only want to talk about themselves and their family and background and history.
Yeah, that's true too. I think there's a space where people really like to talk about how they got to where they're at. They're proud of it, and they should be. I think the question you just have to ask is, how much do other people care? And that's sometimes a hard question to answer when you're on the inside. So typically people don't care where your office is, or that your grandfather started the company, or that you have 3 kids and a dog. It's not usually important, especially when you're selling business services.
Yeah. Well, one way that it could connect with them is if you reframe it and just asking yourself, okay, how does the fact that I have a dog serve the people that I serve? Maybe it does, because maybe you serve dog people, right?
And there's your empathy.
Yeah. So just reframing some of that messaging and making it less about what you're so proud of in your story and more about how does this connect with those special people that I serve.
Yeah. Yeah, I like that. That works.
So the other thing that I find on that too is, especially if you're the product, which let's face it, in a lot of consulting businesses, people are the product and they don't want to show their faces online. That you always want to feature the product on your website, photos, including photos and or videos. So you don't always have to, but it just
Yeah,
helps
but
with that connection.
I tell my clients, I work mostly with people as the product coaches and consultants. And I tell people all the time, it's the best $300 to $400 you'll spend is to get a professional photographer to take some good photos. You'll feel so confident. You'll feel okay about putting them online. It's so much more personal than using stock photos. It's just such a good way it's a great investment.
Yes.
In the Minneapolis Twin Cities area, I have a great photographer for you.
Oh, good. Well, we can put a link with this
I
video.
adore her. I just had new pictures taken like 2 weeks ago, and she came in and took them in my office.
So they will travel into your space.
She traveled about 30 miles, so sure.
Oh, sorry. I didn't mean like across the US, but I mean like to you and to make it in your environment. So that's really helpful because people even seeing your working space, I mean, you can see part of my working space and a lot of us have just like craziness going on behind that camera.
I know, right?
Maybe you don't want to showcase the whole thing, but people do like to see that you have a space to work and that you can get the job done when you need to, and you've got some place to do it.
I think sometimes, especially when we're doing business to business sales, but it's more individual, it's more coach consultant to marketing consultant. I'm hiring, they're hiring a person. It's in a company that represents a company. They still want to have a sense of who that person is. Are they going to relate well to you? Are they going to, is this a stuffy corner office with a view over downtown, or is this kind of your homey place you can lounge and have a glass of wine at the end of the day? I think there is a sense of person in photographs that we can't illustrate with words.
Yeah, for sure. I like to know who I'm buying from.
Yep.
So we have gotten through the guide, empathy and authority. And then what's left? Failure and success.
Yeah, we're gonna talk about the plan. Yeah.
I didn't really, yeah.
I think the biggest problem with plan is that people don't have one.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, they just think, oh, it's obvious, I'll just leave it off. And it really kind of is important. It helps people to feel confident in knowing that they're doing the next right thing correctly.
Yeah. And you know what? Sometimes you put the wrong plan on there. I did this the other day. Look, we've been doing this forever and I still did it wrong. Working with a grocery market. And I was like, this is pretty simple. You just find your location, you come buy your groceries, and you've got a pantry of fresh food, that kind of thing. It was the wrong plan because the plan that needed to be highlighted for this group was how they source their food.
Oh, interesting. So then it wasn't even the customer's process. It was the understanding the company's process so that they felt better about buying from them.
That's right. Also, this is one of those like fresh markets. And so they don't always have the same product. So sort of pulling the veil back so that you could see why. It's because we're looking out for where the farmers are growing and the crops that are being harvested right now. You're getting the freshest food. Here's how we make that happen, and still at discount prices.
That's an interesting problem. I think that's a problem many of us would have made, but I think they're lucky they have you to kind of go, oh, wait a minute, hold on.
It just one day I was like, wait a second, this is the wrong thing. Because they were questioning, they were pushing back on it. So clients should definitely do that. Even if you're using someone who does this all the time, push back when you think it's not working, because we are problem solvers and we'll find ways around it. But they were like, this just doesn't make sense. And I was like, but you need a plan. I'm trying to force that.
Yeah, you bring up another really good point there. I find that oftentimes we uncover better ways to do things when somebody kind of gets tripped up. Like if
Yes.
you're reading something back and there's a clunkiness to it, or someone's like, I don't think that's quite right. And I think that's an internal feeling we all have too. It may not be that it's wrong, but it usually means we can do better.
Yeah.
So paying attention to those little hiccups and those little spots where it's just like, something's not right is really important.
Yeah. And so having that feedback from the customer, because our clients know their people better than we do when we
Absolutely.
come in.
Yeah.
And so having that feedback from them, it helps us make things better too.
Yeah, for sure.
So that's a plan.
Yeah.
And then success and failure. So
Yeah.
where do we go
So
wrong?
we talked about failure a little bit earlier, and that we just need a little bit of failure, right? We just need them to have a sense of what's at stake. What if you don't work with us? What might happen? And for most of the people that we talk to, it's enough to say status quo. It's enough to say, nothing changes unless you take advantage of this thing being offered to you. And so that's saying a lot. If we've identified the right problem, that's saying a lot, right? But oftentimes there can be more things that we can highlight. I was working on a counseling center's wireframe, their front page wireframe the other day, and it became a space where we could bullet point out what happens if you don't get the help that you need. And you could easily see that it's kind of a domino effect, right? I mean, you start with these kind of like nagging feelings of sadness, and it quickly dominoes into poor work performance, relationships depleting, all this kind of other stuff. So it was valuable to kind of show that. It also then presented a space where people could identify with other things that were happening. Say, oh yeah, I mean, things are happening there. Maybe that's connected, kind of a thing.
Yeah.
But most of the time, we want to focus on success. So if you buy my widget, you'll experience fun, entertainment, something to do with your hands, all the different things. And you can do that through, bulleted lists or photographs. Again, real photographs win hands down over stock, but there are good stock images out there. Sometimes we have to do it. Yeah. And so success becomes the space where you just want to like throw everything at it, constantly show people, here's what your life is going to look like when you work with us. Failures, that one of the things you want to use a little bit more sparingly.
Yeah. I see a lot of times like you get one success and everyone's like one and done. And this is the place where you can really put
I see what you
everything
mean.
you've got
Yeah.
into it.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
yeah, success everywhere. I like it to be the third part of the plan. I like to start every headline, insert some sort of success in every headline. I mean, I just can't get enough success.
Yeah. I agree. And I do want to kind of like go a little bit of a tangent on this, because I think it's important that when we're talking about photographs on a website, we want the photographs to represent the people that we want to work with as much as the people that we're currently working with. And so for me, especially as a white woman, I have to be really intentional about getting people of color, diversity, those things on my website. If I don't want to work with 80-year-olds and older, I would not put them on my website, right? But oftentimes I think we miss audiences because it's not what our current clientele looks like.
Interesting.
And it is a great space to kind of open it up and say, see yourself in me, see yourself in my business, and this is a great place where we can add diversity, and just embrace it.
Good. All right. Anything else that you see going really wrong with messaging on a website?
When people don't try to do it, when you say, I'm just going to do it my way, right? Trying to do StoryBrand and not getting it quite right is always better than not. Like even that step toward it is a better move than just leaving the closet looking the way it looks.
Yes. So progress is progress.
Progress is progress. Yep. And call an expert, call somebody to help you.
Yeah. So speaking of that, Do you do hourly rates? Are you doing
You
packages?
know,
How can people get in touch with you?
yeah, I mean, we do a lot of packages. We start with every one of our clients doing what we call messaging workshops. So people come in at varying levels. Some have heard of StoryBrand and have draft scripts done. Others have never heard of it before. So we do work with people at varying levels to kind of get them in and help them really clean up their message overall. And then like you and other companies, then we offer a variety of services after that to help them implement it. So yeah, you're always welcome to come hang out with me. tic-tac-toe-marketing.com.
And we'll have a link as well with the
Oh,
video.
good.
So
Good.
we can send them your way. And you do have a free downloadable on your website. What is it about?
Yeah. So, I mean, one of the biggest things I kind of nail home on is marketing planning, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, no more random acts of marketing, kind of quit throwing spaghetti on the wall and be a little bit more intentional about it. And, we used to do marketing plans in like 12-month chunks. And since COVID hit, that has required us to go down to 3 to 6 month chunks. And so we're
Yeah.
really, with all of our clients, looking more granularly at what we want to happen periodically through 3 to 6 month chunks rather than over the course of a year, just because we're having to reshape and recommunicate all the time right now. So there's a sample 3-month marketing plan that's free to download on my website. Yeah, I mean, use that and I hope it's helpful. Absolutely.
Awesome. And that's totally free. You can go to tic-tac-toe-marketing.com and find Casey's resource for your next 3-month plan for marketing. No more random acts of marketing. You can have a plan. Okay. I think that sums up our interview. I hope this was helpful for everyone who's watching it and just helping you avoid the pitfalls that others have gone before you and made so that you don't have to when implementing a StoryBrand message on your website. Thank you. Oh my gosh, you reached the end. Congratulations and thanks for watching. One quick question before you go. Did you find this interesting? Do you think someone else that you know could benefit from the information you heard here today? Well, do me a favor, hit the like button and subscribe and hit that bell so you can get notifications for when more of this information comes out. By hitting like, it means that this content goes out to other people just like you who might also be able to benefit from this information and can build a more profitable business so they can do more life. All right, thanks for watching. Bye.